Penn State still doesn't have a coach. And that's a bit unfortunate. That's tough. It's pretty rough here. Penn State, no coach right now. And I mean, this article was recently updated. It's published this morning. And Jeff Brom's even mentioned in this one. Well, since this article, Jeff Brom's already said he's staying at Louisville. He's told Louisville he's staying there, is the reports right now. So Penn State is in a bit of a mess. They were the first to fire their coach. They did it early so that they could get started on the search early. And then nobody showed up. They couldn't get a coach. It seems like they probably wanted Cignetti at Indiana. Cignetti says, no, thank you. I'm staying at Indiana, signs a big extension, right? All these coaches started signing extensions. And then Penn State's like, oh, no. So then this week, today was National Signing Day. Not having a coach today is problematic, right? And it's playing out. They still don't have a coach today. They signed, I think, the worst class. I think they only had 2 players. 2 recruits signed with them. And I, honestly, I got to give a shout out. I think it's a defensive lineman, maybe, and I know a quarterback, and I think a defensive lineman signed. I got to give a shout out to those players. I respect you for honoring your, verbal commitment, but to have that many decommits, well, it's because you don't have a coach. These kids don't know who they're playing for. And most likely they were originally recruited by Franklin, and I would assume him and his coaching staff was part of the reason they decided to go to Penn State, or at least verbally commit to. So it's no surprise that they're dropping out. And just this week, they tried to land Kalani Sitake, who actually, BYU head coach, I think that would have been kind of a landmark hire. I think that would have been a good hire for them. Apparently, there was kind of some mutual interest between Sitake and Penn State. It was maybe one of his more dream jobs. He was really looking forward to it. Well, BYU heard that, hey, Sitake's thinking about leaving, and they broke out the coffers. I mean, we got the CEO of Crumble Cookie. We got the CEO of a supplement brand. I can't think of the name of it off the top of my head. Getting involved and being like, what do you need, Sitake? What's it going to take for you to stay here? Sitake seems, I believe he's LDS Mormon faith. Obviously, coaching at BYU, that makes sense. So there's a faith element to it, right? So it's going to be harder to get him away anyways. And then when, multi-billion-dollar CEO companies come in and say, hey, blank check, what do you need to stay? I think you combine that with he obviously has a faith in what BYU is doing with that whole entire religion. Like, we got religion and crumble cookies involved, and all of a sudden, yeah, coaches stand. So he signed a big extension at BYU. Happy for him. Way to get the bag. Shout out Penn State for getting all these coordinators and coaches big salaries, right? Cignetti signs an extension. Sitake signs an extension, right? The list goes on. So who's left, honestly? Who's left, and what does Penn State do? And did they make the right decision in firing James Franklin? I think I'll start by saying they made the right decision to fire James Franklin. And I know that, might be a bit of a hot take. A lot of pundits are like, why'd you fire James Franklin? I know James Franklin's agent is very upset, and he also happens to be the agent for a lot of people in the industry, other coaches, people in the media, etc. And so they're kind of running this campaign, and that's fair to say, hey, you should not have fired James Franklin. They're punishing him. That's the rumor out there. But I think you needed to fire James Franklin. Okay, he'd been there for 10 years, 11 years. That's enough time. Sometimes you just need a new start. And I actually think he's going to be a great coach at Virginia Tech. They signed a pretty good class for Virginia Tech this year. Stole a few Penn State recruits. actually kept a lot of the recruits that were originally thinking of staying there. So I think he's going to do fine at Virginia Tech. But there is some truth to it was time to leave Penn State. Sometimes you've been there for 10 years, you haven't won the national championship. You're winning a lot of games, but you might need some new juice in the building. Okay? Just a new perspective. And for James Franklin, I think he needed a new place to coach, a new challenge. It can be like invigorating to start a new job. Sometimes you can get just kind of stuck in the going through the motions if you've been at a company for a long time, right? And I think that's very similar in football coaches. You see a coach, it's being talked about in the NFL right now with Mike Tomlin, right? He's a coach. He hasn't won playoff games. They haven't had a losing season in forever. Is it time for Tomlin to move on? And I think it was time to separate from James Franklin. He led them out of a very dark time for Penn State athletics. There were lots of sanctions involved and things like that. And he has come out of that. That was not long in the past when he started there. And I think he's done a good job. He got Penn State back to relevance, but he couldn't win the big game. He couldn't get over the hump. And he'd been there 10 plus years. It's time to find some new juice, some new life in the building. So Penn State, I think, made the right decision. The problem is they haven't been able to find a coach. And that part of it could be some serious mismanagement. Firing James Franklin, I don't think was the mistake. Now, there has definitely been a mistake in not having a coach. Now, Klatt's been talking Dable. Actually, I think Dable might be the leading candidate on a lot of the prediction markets. So you got Dable. We were thinking maybe Jeff Brom this morning, although this evening it looks like that's a no. Who else is out there? Well, you got some coaches that are still, playing and coaching their teams. People are saying Kalen DeBoer. I don't think DeBoer leaves. He is more of a Midwest guy, but I think because he made the playoff, most likely, again, we're assuming that the committee is going to have any level of consistency, which maybe that's a mistake. But DeBoer most likely is in the playoff this year. It's possible he wins a playoff game or two. You can win a national title at Alabama. And I don't really think, unlike the next coach we're going to talk about, I don't believe that DeBoer actually believes in his heart Penn State is a better job necessarily. So it would only be if DeBoer actually didn't like being in Alabama, didn't maybe like the pressure or didn't like living in the area because he's more of a Midwest. I think he started South Dakota. I don't see DeBoer leaving. I think the only person that they're really on at this point is probably Dable. I think that's the best one. Maybe Manny Diaz obviously has connections to Penn State. And he's coaching Duke, who's in the ACC championship game. So that's a thing, right? We're going to have a situation there where he probably wouldn't want to leave quite yet. So it's possible because he's still coaching that you have an opportunity for Manny Diaz to go. But, some other names that were out there originally, Matt Rule being a Penn State guy, he's locked up, new contract. Again, like I said at the beginning, shout out Penn State for getting a bunch of people extensions, right? They got Cignetti an extension, they got Rule an extension, they got Sataki an extension. The list goes on and on. They're running out of options. So, again, I think Penn State made the right decision in firing. I think they've poorly managed the search.